Attention, you useless heaps of exoskeletal refuse! Lieutenant CAC roared, his auxiliary vocal sac swelling to a disconcerting shade of purple. The Federation audit is scheduled for tomorrow. Should I discover a single particle of unpolished carapace, or observe one tentacle out of alignment during the assembly, I shall personally guarantee your subsequent posting entails sanitation duty on the methane-rich satellites of Real 9. The living quarters of Outpost Station Zeta-12 burst into a frenzy of motion as 23 individuals belonging to the 7th Galactic Marines Unit hurried to stand at attention. Their assorted appendages, ranging from feelers to pincers to gripping tails, snapped into stiff salutes. It was only once Lieutenant CAC had departed, leaving behind the subtle aroma of aggravated pheromones, that the quarters collectively released a held breath. "By the void, I believed he would persist indefinitely," moaned Corporal Nix, her half-dozen eyes winking in swift sequence as she slumped onto her sleep pod. Her external skeleton clinked against the metal structure. "Yet another examination. It's as though we haven't undergone 3 already in this rotation." Private Torque emitted a chuckle, the sound gurgling through his respiration device. "Well, at minimum, it's merely Federation officials this time. Recall the Arcturian ambassador's visit? Poor Sergeant Blixer was molting scales for weeks due to the anxiety." The quarters filled with laughter, a mix of whoops, clicks, and infrasonic vibrations that would have been bewildering to anyone unaccustomed to multi-species military accommodations. "Regarding Arcturians," Specialist Z interjected, extending her crystalline structures as she leaned against a wall, "did you hear the legend about their supposed decade-long hibernation whenever their twin stars synchronize?" "Utter balderdash, I'd say." Private Elke snorted through her olfactory openings. "That's trivial compared to the beliefs of the Vuans. They maintain that their progenitors sprang from cosmic ovules deposited by space-navigating divinities." "Ha! And they are allegedly one of the more technologically sophisticated species in this quadrant." As the evening phase faded and the artificial illumination within the quarters dimmed, the dialogue transitioned to what had become a favored activity among the troops, exchanging and deriding species fables. It served as a means of connection that surpassed anatomical variations, enabling soldiers from widely divergent evolutionary origins to discover commonality through shared ridicule. "However, the most captivating myths," Corporal Drex asserted, his mandibles clicking with anticipation as he lowered his voice to a confidential murmur, "are undoubtedly the human ones." The mere reference to humans triggered a fresh round of whooping laughter throughout the quarters. Specialist Gorn nearly choked on his sustenance paste. "Oh, Void, yes, the humans," wheezed Sergeant Vassix, her bioluminescent patches flickering with amusement. "The most malleable species in the known galaxy, attempting to persuade everyone they are supreme predators." Private Jorex, one of the more junior recruits, tilted his eye stalks in bewilderment. "I fail to comprehend. Aren't humans merely a minor species originating from some peripheral world? Why would anyone concern themselves with their folklore?" The quarters momentarily fell quiet before Corporal Nix fluttered her wing structures and clarified, "Technically, affirmative. They hail from a planet designated Earth, located within an undistinguished system. Yet somehow, these delicate-skinned, two-armed bipeds, utterly devoid of natural defenses, have succeeded in joining the Galactic Federation and securing 27 seats on the Council." "Which is utterly illogical," interjected Private Torque, slapping a tentacle against his cot for emphasis. "They possess no protective plating, no venom, no capacity for regeneration, and their visual perception is confined to a pathetically restricted spectrum. Yet if you heed their narratives," Specialist Zeph interjected, barely suppressing her crystalline laughter, "they would have you believe they dominated their planet by pursuing their prey until it succumbed to exhaustion. My personal preference," added Sergeant Vassix, her voice breaking with merriment, "is their assertion that they can endure substantial loss of their circulatory fluid and yet persist in combat." The quarters dissolved into boisterous laughter once more, each trooper contributing their own favored ludicrous human assertion to the expanding catalog of absurdities. "And they profess," Specialist Zeph continued, her crystalline form shimmering under the quarter's illumination. That they can fracture their own skeletal structures and simply walk it off. Can you fathom such nonsense? She gestured with her prismatic limbs in feigned incredulity. Private Torque gurgled with laughter, the fluid within his respiration sacs bubbling audibly. Oh, that's inconsequential. Have you encountered their preposterous claim that they can endure temperature variations that would literally incinerate or congeal most species? As if any carbon-based organism could withstand such extremes without specialized technology. My favorite, interjected Corporal Nix, her mandibles quivering with barely restrained amusement, is their ridiculous boast about being able to consume substances that would be fatal to their systems, purely for enjoyment. They refer to it as spicy food or alcohol. Imagine deliberately poisoning oneself for amusement. The quarters erupted in another surge of multi-tonal laughter. Private Jorex, still relatively unfamiliar with human mythology, extended his eye stalks in fascination. But if they are so frail and, frankly, unintelligent, how did they even attain spacefaring capabilities? He inquired, genuinely puzzled. Sergeant Vassix's bioluminescent patches pulsed with patronizing amusement. Pure, unadulterated fortune, that's the sole explanation. Their mythos posits that they progressed from rudimentary flight to lunar landing in fewer than 70 planetary orbits. 70 orbits? Echoed Private Jorex, his dermal folds fluttering in disbelief. That's unachievable. The Glorex required over 2,000 cycles to accomplish the same feat, and they are regarded as technological marvels. Specialist Gorn, who had remained comparatively subdued, chittered softly before contributing his perspective. The truly preposterous element is their assertion that their scientific advancements stemmed from, get this, intellectual curiosity and rivalry. Not survival imperative, not celestial intervention, merely because they were experiencing ennui and sought to surpass one another. Precisely, Corporal Drex exclaimed, striking his reinforced pincer against the metallic locker with a resounding clang. They've fabricated this elaborate narrative that they are somehow resilient and inventive, when anyone with a functioning neural cluster can discern that they are merely delicate, susceptible primates who fortuitously blundered into galactic society. Private Lorca adjusted her gravity regulators before adding with a snort, "Recall that diplomatic incident last cycle, when Ambassador Thror inadvertently spilled nutrient fluid on a human delegate, and everyone panicked, believing the human's outer membrane would dissolve upon contact?" She paused dramatically, and then the human simply wiped it off and resumed negotiations, as if nothing had transpired. Classic diplomatic posturing. Sergeant Vassix declared authoritatively, "Everyone is aware that the Federation bolsters human accomplishments for political motives. Inclusivity mandates and all that progressive drivel. They don't even possess supplementary organ systems." "Bode," Private Torque concurred, his tentacles writhing in amusement. "One cardiac organ, one cerebral organ, 2 pulmonary organs. It's as though they were engineered for failure. And yet," Specialist Z added with mock solemnity, her crystalline structure shimmering as she stifled further laughter, "they possess the temerity to assert they've endured numerous extinction-level events on their homeworld. Or that they battled their way to supremacy without natural weaponry," added Corporal Nix. "Or that they can function for days without adequate sleep cycles," chimed in Private Lura. Each increasingly outlandish human myth sparked fresh bursts of mirth throughout the quarters, with soldiers nearly tumbling from their cots in convulsive laughter. The quarters door hissed open with pneumatic accuracy, instantly slicing through the boisterous merriment. Every soldier froze mid-motion as a commanding presence filled the entranceway. Commander V stood silhouetted against the corridor's stark illumination, his scarred exoskeleton bearing the unmistakable indications of innumerable conflicts. 3 of his original 6 appendages had been substituted with sophisticated prosthetics, their gleaming metal contrasting sharply with his natural deep blue carapace. The left aspect of his face was a masterpiece of reconstructive surgery, featuring 1 organic compound eye alongside an artificial tactical scanner that glowed with a faint crimson radiance. "Commander on deck!" bellowed Sergeant Vassix, her bioluminescence instantly shifting to formal acknowledgement configurations. The entire quarters scrambled to attention, a chaotic symphony of clicks, scrapes, and flutters as 23 distinct species of soldiers assumed their respective postures of deference. "At ease, soldiers," Commander V stated, his voice surprisingly mellow for someone of his stature and renown. The cybernetic voice modulator embedded in his throat imparted a subtle harmonic undertone to each word. "I am not here on official business." Despite his words, no one fully relaxed. Commander V was a living legend within the 7th Galactic Marines, a recipient of the Nova Cross, a veteran of the Hive War, and the sole surviving officer from the infamous Battle of Proxima Centauri. His mere presence commanded respect bordering on veneration. "Sir, would you do us the honor of participating in our evening leisure activity?" inquired Corporal Nix, her customary confidence noticeably diminished. Commander V's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he fully entered the quarters, the door sealing shut behind him. "Leisure activity, you say? In what form does this leisure activity manifest, Corporal?" Private Torque nervously adjusted his respiration apparatus. Just exchanging cultural narratives, sir. Nothing in violation of regulations." "Cultural narratives?" The commander's prosthetic limbs whirred softly as he moved further into the room. I perceived laughter. Quite a considerable amount of it, in fact. An uncomfortable quietude descended upon the quarters. Ultimately, Specialist Zev spoke up, her crystalline form trembling slightly. "We were deliberating upon human myths, Commander." At the mention of humans, something altered in Commander V's organic eye, a subtle shift that veterans among the group instantly recognized as the countenance of someone accessing combat recollections. "Human myths," he reiterated slowly, the harmonic undertone of his voice modulator suddenly more prominent. "I comprehend." The atmosphere in the quarters became tense as Commander Veit lowered himself onto a reinforced bench, his battle-worn exoskeleton creaking faintly. The gleaming metal of the Nova Cross caught the illumination as he shifted, a stark reminder that this wasn't just any officer. This was someone who had witnessed the most horrific aspects of the galaxy and survived. "Do you find human assertions entertaining?" Commander V inquired, breaking the uncomfortable silence. His organic eye focused intently on the assembly, while his cybernetic scanner pulsed rhythmically. No one dared speak. The legendary commander's tone wasn't irate, but it carried an undercurrent that caused every soldier's survival instincts to tingle with apprehension. "Perhaps," he continued, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, "you'd care to impart some of these comical human myths to me. I could benefit from a hearty laugh after the day I've endured." The soldiers exchanged apprehensive glances. Finally, Corporal Drex cleared his throat. "We were merely deliberating upon how humans assert they can, persist in combat despite sustaining substantial injuries, sir. Manifestly an exaggeration of their capabilities." "An exaggeration?" Commander V echoed, his voice perilously soft. "Is that your assessment? Is it—" With deliberate slowness, he reached up and disengaged a neural connection at the base of his cybernetic arm. The advanced prosthetic went limp. "Do you know how I forfeited my original appendages, Corporal?" In the Battle of Proxima Centauri, sir," Drex responded, suddenly acutely cognizant of the tension within the room. "Correct. And who do you suppose conveyed me 3 kilometers through active enemy fire after both my left limbs were severed by hive shrapnel?" The commander's organic eye narrowed. It wasn't one of our medical personnel. It wasn't a tin-carry heavy worlder with their augmented strength. It was a human, lieutenant named Reyes. 5 feet, 7 inches in their units of measure, weighing less than half my mass. The quarters remained deathly silent as Commander V reconnected his neural coupling, flexing his metallic digits. "But that's not physically achievable," ventured Specialist Gorn hesitantly. "Human muscular architecture couldn't possibly—" "Couldn't possibly?" Commander V's voice boomed suddenly, causing several soldiers to flinch. "Permit me to inform you what's not feasible, Specialist. It's not feasible that I'm seated here conversing with you presently. By every medical computation in the galaxy, I should have exsanguinated in that forsaken jungle. But that human, that fragile, delicate-skinned human you were all just deriding, utilized their own compression bandages on my injuries, disregarding the fact that they had a fragment of shrapnel lodged in their abdomen. Commander V stood abruptly, his massive frame towering over the now thoroughly subdued soldiers. You believe their narratives of endurance are fables? You believe their assertions regarding temperature tolerance are embellishments? He emitted a harsh, barking laugh that contained no mirth. Allow me to pose this question. How many of you could function in minus 40-degree conditions, clothed in nothing but woven fabric? Because I've witnessed humans accomplish precisely that. Jorex's eye stalks retracted slightly in bewilderment. But sir, with deference, if humans are genuinely as capable as you suggest, why isn't this common knowledge? Why do their capabilities appear so improbable? Commander V's posture relaxed slightly, his cybernetic eye dimming as he regarded the young soldier. An excellent inquiry, Private. One that demonstrates genuine critical thought. He lowered himself back onto the bench, which creaked under his weight. The veracity regarding humans is intricate, he stated, his voice returning to its earlier softness, and deliberately obfuscated for motivations that might astonish you. Commander V leaned forward, his organic components and cybernetic enhancements operating in flawless synchronization. The quarters had fallen into a silence so absolute that the faint hum of the station's life support systems seemed deafening by comparison. Humans, he commenced, his voice assuming the quality of someone divulging classified data, are categorized as Deathworlders. A collective gasp rippled through the quarters. Specialist Z's crystalline structure actually fractured slightly from shock. That's unfeasible, Sergeant Vassix protested, her bioluminescence flickering erratically. Deathworlders are subjected to quarantine. They are not permitted within the Galactic Federation. Commander V fixed her with a piercing gaze. Humans constitute the exception to that regulation, Sergeant. The singular exception in the annals of galactic jurisprudence. But why? Demanded Corporal Nix, momentarily disregarding that she was addressing a superior officer. The commander's mandibles clicked in what the veterans recognized as his rendition of a grim smile. Because we require them. More specifically, we require their unparalleled biological adaptations. He rose again, pacing the constricted space between cots, his cybernetic legs whirring softly. Earth isn't merely a death world, it's a Class 5 death world, the most elevated classification. A planet so lethal that 99.98% of spacefaring species would succumb within hours of landing without comprehensive protection. What renders it so perilous? Private Jorex inquired, his inquisitiveness overcoming his trepidation. Everything, Commander V exclaimed, throwing his arms wide. Extreme temperature fluctuations, atmospheric oxygen concentrations that would be poisonous to most species, gravitational forces that would crush the exoskeletons of half the species in this chamber, microscopic entities that have evolved explicitly to infiltrate and consume living tissue. He paused, allowing his words to penetrate, before resuming in a more measured tone. And that's merely the planet itself. We haven't even broached the subject of the indigenous life forms. Earth evolved predators so proficient that humans, yes, those same humans you were deriding, were not at the apex of their own food chain for the majority of their evolutionary trajectory. Private Torque adjusted his respiration apparatus nervously. So, the narratives about them enduring multiple extinction-level occurrences are all factual? Confirmed, Commander V affirmed with a decisive nod. Their planet has endeavored to eradicate them with glacial epochs, supervolcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and pandemic maladies. And through it all, these fragile beings adapted and persisted. He tapped his cybernetic eye, which projected a holographic representation of a human skeletal structure. Observe this. Genuinely observe. What you perceive as fragility is, in actuality, extraordinary efficiency. Their bones are lightweight yet, pound for pound, more robust than our most sophisticated composite materials. Their so-called delicate tissue contains a protein designated collagen that, proportionally, is more resilient than Starship-grade carbon fiber. The focus of the projection shifted to display a human cardiovascular system. And this, their circulatory network can seal its own breaches. Their bodies can repurpose compromised tissue. They don't merely heal, they can entirely restructure portions of themselves in response to stress or trauma. Commander V deactivated the projection, his organic eyes sweeping across the now utterly dumbfounded countenances of his subordinates. When a human declares they can walk off a fractured bone, they are not exaggerating, he stated quietly. I've witnessed a human soldier persist in combat with multiple fractures. I've observed them function despite blood loss that would render any of us insensate. And I've seen them endure conditions that our medical AI calculated as possessing a 0% survival probability. Commander V's organic eye assumed a distant expression, the cybernetic one dimming slightly, as if accessing profound memory archives. My initial encounter with humans wasn't aboard some diplomatic vessel or at a Federation outpost, he commenced, his voice adopting a storyteller's cadence. It occurred 3 decades ago during the Hive War. I was merely a lieutenant then, commanding a standard mixed-species squadron. The chamber seemed to darken around them as his words painted vivid depictions of the past. We were deployed to Novaris 4, a mining colony that had gone silent. Following reported Hive activity, standard search and rescue operation, or so we believed. He emitted a harsh clicking sound. We were mistaken, so catastrophically mistaken. Brax's cybernetic hand clenched involuntarily. It was an ambush. The Hive had evolved a novel tactic employing the colony's communication array to entice military response teams. We forfeited half our squadron within the initial 3 minutes of landing. The soldiers listened, enthralled by this first-hand narrative of the infamous conflict that had nearly precipitated the Federation's collapse 2 decades prior. We were pinned down within what remained of the colony's central processing facility, encircled, outgunned, with no extraction feasible. His mandibles clicked in recalled tension. That's when they arrived. The humans, sir? Whispered Private Jorex. Just one human initially, V corrected. A scout from an experimental unit designated Orbital Drop Shock Troopers. This human, call sign Spectre, had been literally propelled at the planet's surface within a reinforced drop pod. Bra shook his head in lingering disbelief. When I initially observed what emerged from that smoldering metallic coffin, I believed the Federation had dispatched some form of jest. This creature was half my size, devoid of natural armor, lacking supplementary appendages, nothing that appeared remotely combat effective. His organic eye narrowed. And then I watched this solitary human eliminate 17 Hive drones in under 120 seconds. A stunned silence descended upon the quarters. How? Corporal Nix finally managed to inquire. Velocity and adaptability I'd never previously witnessed, Rax responded. The human maneuvered in manners that defied tactical prediction algorithms. They appeared to process battlefield data and react more swiftly than our most sophisticated combat AIs. He gestured with his prosthetic limb. But the genuinely shocking aspect transpired subsequently. After establishing communication, this Spectre informed me that a complete squad of human troopers was inbound, and that they intended to not merely extract us, but eradicate the entire Hive presence. Bra emitted a sound that might have been a laugh. I believed they were deranged. Our intelligence estimated at least 300 Hive warriors within that colony. I informed them as much. His voice dropped lower. Do you know what the humans stated? Good. Wouldn't want to squander the excursion. Uttered it with a facial contortion they designate a smile, which, incidentally, is an instinctive threat display they've repurposed for social cohesion. Utterly terrifying the first time you encounter it. Commander V's gaze swept across his captivated audience. 6 hours later, I watched 12 humans systematically dismantle a Hive force that should have annihilated them. And do you know what was most unsettling? They were relishing it. They emitted vocalizations of pleasure whoops and hell yeah and other untranslatable sounds while engaging in combat that would traumatize most sentient species. Commander V tapped his prosthetic leg, the metallic sound reverberating through the now silent barracks. You all believe humans lack natural armaments. That's their most potent deception. He leaned forward intently. Humans don't require natural armaments. They transmute everything into a weapon. Specialist Zeph's crystalline form shimmered with perplexity. I fail to comprehend, Commander. Permit me to elucidate, V stated, his voice dropping to an almost reverential tone. During the Battle of Proxima Centauri, the same engagement where I forfeited these appendages, our battalion was cornered within an abandoned terraforming station. The Hive had severed power, communications, everything. We were quite literally in the dark, with hostiles approaching from all vectors. His organic eye narrowed at the recollection. Standard military doctrine in such circumstances is unambiguous. Establish defensive positions, conserve ammunition, await extraction. That's what we were doing. The humans? They possessed alternative concepts. Rax gestured expansively with his cybernetic arm. Lieutenant Reyes, the same human who would subsequently convey me to safety, surveyed our dire predicament and stated something I shall never forget. We possess a chemical processing facility replete with volatile compounds, kilometers of pipeline, and adversaries who cannot perceive in the dark any better than we can. I'd deem that an advantage. An asterisk advantage asterisk? Echoed Corporal Drex incredulously. Precisely my response, V concurred with a click of his mandibles. But within 20 minutes, this human had orchestrated our remaining forces into implementing what they designated Home Alone protocol. It's apparently a reference to some archaic human tactical manual. He paused, mandibles operating in what the soldiers now recognized as amusement. They converted the entire facility into one colossal sequence of traps and improvised explosives. They redirected pipeline flow to generate pressurized jets of flammable gas. They rigged chemical storage units to create clouds of caustic vapor when triggered. They even, and this still astonishes, computed precisely how to collapse specific structural supports to generate bottlenecks that would funnel the Hive forces precisely where they desired them. Commander V's voice assumed a note of genuine admiration. When the Hive breached our perimeter, they didn't discover cornered quarry. They encountered a labyrinth of demise, engineered by a species that had evolved to cogitate in terms of manipulating their environment rather than relying on biological advantages. He tapped his cybernetic scanner meaningfully. By the time our extraction arrived, the humans had eradicated over 400 Hive warriors with only 8 soldiers and whatever they could assemble from the station's resources. The quarters remained utterly silent, each soldier processing this revelation with varying degrees of disbelief and dawning respect. Commander V surveyed the stunned expressions of his subordinates, his cybernetic eye pulsing with what might have been gratification. And now we arrive at the inquiry posed earlier, he stated, gesturing toward Private Jorex. Why is the veracity regarding humans deliberately obfuscated? Why perpetuate this fiction that they're merely another unremarkable species who somehow blundered their way into the cosmos? He rose to his full height, towering over the seated soldiers. Because the Galactic Security Council is terrified of them. The declaration hung in the air like a plasma charge poised to detonate. Humans, Commander V continued, his voice gravely serious, are the sole known species to have developed weapons of mass destruction, prior to achieving unified planetary governance. Allow that to penetrate. Several soldiers exchanged alarmed glances as V persisted. They nearly annihilated themselves multiple times during their pre-Union history. They engineered atomic weaponry capable of rendering entire continents uninhabitable as a deterrent . Their historical archives are replete with conflicts so savage that the Federation's diplomatic corps initially categorized them as a prohibited, aggressive species. He began pacing again, his cybernetic legs generating rhythmic sounds against the metal flooring. But here's what genuinely frightens galactic leadership. Humans don't merely endure adversity, they flourish on it. They seek it out . Sergeant Vassix's bioluminescence pulsed questioningly. Sir, if they are so perilous, why admit them into the Federation at all? An excellent inquiry with a straightforward response. The Hive War. V ceased pacing abruptly. We were losing and losing decisively until human military advisors joined the conflict. Their intuitive comprehension of asymmetric warfare their adaptability in battlefield conditions, their seemingly insane willingness to undertake calculated risks, it altered everything asterisk. His mandibles clicked in a pattern indicating solemn reverence. The official records state that the conflict was won through collaborative interspecies military cooperation. The veracity is that human strategic innovations were accountable for over 70% of our critical victories. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. Following the war, the Security Council confronted a quandary. Here was a species with unparalleled combat efficacy, technological innovation rates that defied predictive paradigms, and a historical pattern of incessant conflict. By all established protocols, they should have been restrained, not embraced. Commander V leaned forward, his organic eye gleaming. Instead, they devised what might be the most elegant resolution in galactic political history. They permitted humans entry into the Federation while concurrently propagating the narrative that humans are comparatively unremarkable. They interred the classification reports on Earth as a death world. They downplayed human military accomplishments. They fostered the very misapprehensions you were all deriding earlier. But why asterisk? Asked Corporal Nix, genuinely bewildered. Because, Rax answered solemnly, the alternative was admitting to the galaxy that we had invited apex predators to join our civilization. A profound silence permeated the quarters as Commander V concluded his revelation. The atmosphere had transmuted entirely, from the boisterous mockery of earlier to something approximating reverence, or perhaps a salubrious apprehension. Tomorrow, Commander V stated, his voice reverting to its official cadence. When the Federation inspection team arrives, it will encompass 2 human representatives. I propose you treat them with the deference they merit, but uphold the diplomatic fiction we've deliberated upon. He straightened to his full stature, cybernetic components whirring softly. Bear in mind, the galaxy's stability partially hinges on the majority of species not comprehensively grasping what humans genuinely are asterisk. As the commander turned to depart, Private Jorix's eye stalks extended slightly. Sir, one final inquiry? Bra paused at the doorway. Yes, Private? Do the humans know about the containment stratagem? Commander V's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Of course they know. They proposed it. With that bombshell, he departed, leaving the quarters in stunned silence. After several moments, Sergeant Vassix's bioluminescence flickered back to life. Well, she stated quietly, I believe we've all acquired something invaluable this evening. Affirmative, concurred Corporal Nix, her 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession. Never underestimate a species predicated on appearances. Private Torque adjusted his respiration apparatus. I shall never perceive humans in the same manner again. To contemplate, all this time we've been serving alongside Deathworlders What's most impressive, mused Specialist Zeph, her crystalline structure catching the illumination, is that they permit this misapprehension to endure. That level of strategic cogitation is precisely why they're perilous. And precisely why they're invaluable allies, concluded Corporal Drex, with newfound respect in his voice. As the nocturnal cycle fully engaged and the quarters' lighting dimmed to a subdued glow, the soldiers settled into their respective sleeping arrangements. But unlike previous nights, there was no further laughter at ludicrous human myths. Instead, there was pensive silence and, perhaps, a nascent appreciation for the deceptively fragile-appearing bipeds who had earned their place among the stars. Not through fortune, as they had all presumed, but through an evolutionary crucible none of them could genuinely fathom. And when the human representatives arrived the subsequent day, each soldier observed them with new eyes, noticing their efficient movements, their swift adaptations to the station's artificial gravity, and, most disconcertingly, their facile smiles that suddenly seemed less like affable gestures and more like what they truly were. The instinctive threat displays of apex predators, confident in their position within the galactic food chain.